I had just gotten home from work, exhausted but satisfied. My small house sat at the end of the cul-de-sac, its porch lights casting a warm glow that welcomed me back. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I parked in the driveway and stepped out, feeling the kind of relief that only comes after a long day. But as I turned to face my house, something felt off. My mind struggled to make sense of it at first. The porch was gone, the windows were gone, the walls were gone. My house was gone. Where my home had stood just hours before, there was now a heap of rubble, a flattened mess of broken wood and shattered memories. My stomach twisted, my breath caught, and my legs nearly gave out. I wasn't standing in my driveway anymore. I was standing in the ruins of my life. Neighbors lingered at a distance, some staring in shock, others murmuring to each other. A man in a construction vest stood near the wreckage, clipboard in hand, looking completely unfazed. My voice came back, rough and shaking with fury. What the hell happened to my house? He barely looked up. Demolition ordered by the HOA, he said, flipping a page like he was reading a grocery list. Your property violated the neighborhood's aesthetic standards. The board approved the teardown this morning. For a moment, everything went quiet. A ringing filled my ears, and a slow, burning anger ignited deep inside me. I'd followed every absurd HOA rule, paid every fee on time, spent years shaping my home to their exact demands, and they demolished it, just like that. I took a shaky breath, forcing words through gritted teeth. Where's the approval notice? The man smirked, like I'd asked something ridiculous. We don't handle that. The HOA sends those. Take it up with them. My fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. Take it up with them? My home was a pile of debris, and this guy wanted me to talk to the same crooked idiots who'd done this. The HOA had always been a nightmare, but I never imagined they'd go this far. It started small, letters complaining about the shade of my door, threats over a trash can left out too long, endless fines for petty violations that were clearly just power plays. I complied at first, thinking it was the cost of living in a regulated neighborhood. But no matter how much I obeyed, they always found something new to nitpick. The HOA president, Evelyn Carter, was a woman who lived for control. She wasn't just enforcing rules, she was a dictator, the type who thought a minor title gave her the right to rule over everyone. And now she'd taken everything from me. I turned to the construction worker. Who signed off on this? He shrugged, handing me a copy of the demolition permit. My eyes raced over it, heart pounding. There was my address, my name, and at the bottom, Evelyn's neat, smug signature. This wasn't a mistake or a mix-up, it was intentional. I spun around and marched toward her house, my steps quick and fueled by raw anger. My home hadn't just been knocked down, it had been erased. No warning, no chance to save anything. My furniture, my clothes, my entire life, reduced to splinters because of some made-up violation. I banged on Evelyn's door. When she opened it, she had the gall to look surprised. "Oh, it's you," she said, her voice oozing fake pity. "I was just about to call you." My pulse thundered in my ears. "You destroyed my house." She sighed, like I was the unreasonable one. "Your property was an eyesore. The board voted to have it removed. You voted to demolish someone's home." My voice climbed, barely holding back the storm inside me. Evelyn folded her arms. "It was for the good of the community. Your house wasn't up to standard and was dragging down property values." I stared at her, her shameless words making my vision blur with rage. This wasn't about rules, it was personal. Evelyn had always had it out for me, finding any excuse to harass me, find me, and now obliterate my home. She waved a manicured hand. "If you've got complaints, file an appeal with the board." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "The same board that just voted to erase my home? You expect me to sit in a meeting and politely ask you to fix this?" Her lips curled into a smug smile. "I suggest you watch your tone, dear. Making a scene won't help you." It took every ounce of self-control not to lunge at her. I wanted to scream, to rip apart her pristine little house the way she destroyed mine. But anger alone wouldn't undo this. I took a deep breath, hands shaking. "You think this is over?" Her smirk wavered slightly. I leaned in, voice low and cold. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." I turned and walked away, every step over the wreckage of my home, every broken plank and crushed memory, feeding the fire inside me. This wasn't done. Evelyn and her HOA had ruined my life. Now I'd ruin them. I spent that night in my car, staring at the remains of my house. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Evelyn's smug face, the casual way she brushed off destroying everything I'd built. My whole life was rubble because of her and the corrupt HOA she ran like her personal fiefdom. By morning, the anger wasn't just simmering, it was overflowing. I had to do something. But the first hurdle came fast. The police barely cared when I called. They showed up, snapped a few pictures, and acted like it was a petty disagreement. The lead officer, a guy who looked half asleep, shrugged as I explained. HOA's got the paperwork, he said, flipping through his notepad. Demolition permits in order. It's legal. I couldn't believe it. Legal? They tore my house down over fake violations without warning. He sighed, like I was the problem. File a complaint with the HOA or take it to civil court. That was it. No arrests, no investigation. They left, and I was back at square one. The insurance company was no help either. They said since the demolition was a lawful order, they weren't liable. My policy didn't cover wrongful HOA actions, because who plans for that? I stood in front of the rubble, phone in hand, rereading emails that all said the same thing. I was out of options. That's what they wanted me to think, what they'd made everyone in this neighborhood believe. But I wasn't giving up. If they wanted a fight, I'd give them one. I started with my neighbors. At first, they were reluctant to talk. Everyone had seen what happened to me and didn't want to be next. But fear only lasts so long. The more I pushed, the more I found cracks in the HOA's armor. People began sharing stories. A single mom buried under fines until she had to sell her house. An elderly couple forced to repaint their home 3 times because Evelyn didn't like the shade. A guy down the street made to replace a perfectly good fence because it was an inch too tall. It was a pattern. The HOA wasn't just enforcing rules. It was extorting people, targeting those they didn't like, and bleeding others dry with fees. One night, I got a call from a man named Daniel. He'd lived here for years and had once been on the HOA board before Evelyn ousted him. He didn't just have stories, he had evidence. We met at a diner outside the neighborhood, away from prying eyes. He slid a flash drive across the table. It's all there, he said quietly. Emails, bank statements, the whole scam. I plugged it into my laptop that night, and what I found chilled me. The HOA wasn't just abusive, they were running a full-blown fraud. Evelyn and the board were pocketing money for repairs that never happened, funneling fines into personal accounts, even selling foreclosed homes to their cronies for pennies. They'd done it all legally, or so they thought. There were gaps, though, contradictory emails, missing receipts, enough to raise eyebrows. Evidence wasn't enough. I needed a plan they couldn't recover from. I started small, leaking minor details to local groups to sow doubt. People who'd blindly trusted the HOA began asking questions. Then I went bigger, sending anonymous tips to news stations about a major HOA scandal. I found a lawyer, a tough guy who despised HOAs as much as I did, and we got to work. But I needed one final push. Evelyn was careful, but her arrogance was her weakness. She thought she was invincible, and that's what I'd use against her. I set a trap by playing the broken victim. I emailed the HOA, pretending to be defeated, begging for a settlement to drop everything. Evelyn bit immediately. She didn't just reply, she sent a detailed email about past settlements, mentioning homeowners they'd paid off and how they'd fudged financial reports to hide it. It was gold. I forwarded it to my lawyer, the news, and the state attorney general. The fallout was instant. Local stations ran exposés, interviewing extorted homeowners. Reporters dug into the HOA's finances, finding more fraud than I'd uncovered. The story exploded, making Evelyn and her board public enemies overnight. Then the state stepped in. Auditors tore through the HOA's records, froze accounts, questioned board members. Arrest warrants followed. One by one, they were hauled off. Evelyn last, dragged from her house in handcuffs as cameras rolled. I watched from afar, feeling not just rage but justice. But I wasn't finished. I wanted the whole board down. The others panicked after Evelyn's arrest, scrambling to save themselves. With Daniel's help, I targeted the weakest links: Thomas, the treasurer, and Sarah, the secretary. They'd handled the money, covering tracks for years. Thomas broke first. I'd gotten his financial records, Thousands of HOA dollars funneled into his personal accounts, disguised as maintenance fees. I leaked it to the news, and reporters swarmed him. He denied it, but his lawyers soon cut a deal, spilling more on Evelyn: forged documents, rigged votes. Sarah was smarter but cocky. She'd kept meticulous records, thinking they'd protect her. I found them: emails, transactions, messages plotting against homeowners, and sent them to the state. They raided her home, arrested her, and she cracked too. With 3 down, the rest of the board collapsed. Some resigned, some fled, but the investigation widened. Even the IRS got involved, uncovering years of financial crimes. I didn't stop there. With other homeowners, I dismantled the HOA entirely. We held meetings, voted to dissolve it, and took legal steps to prevent another corrupt board. The neighborhood was free. As the dust settled, I rebuilt my home. Bigger, stronger, better. It wasn't just recovery, it was victory. I'd won, not just for me, but for everyone they'd silenced.